how to actually budget in 2026, and why everything you've tried before was set up to fail. The single biggest reason most people struggle with budgeting is one that nobody wants to admit. The system they built was never designed for the person they actually are. It was designed for a fantasy version of themselves. Disciplined, robotic, impervious to a bad day or a spontaneous dinner invitation. Budgets fail because they are too rigid, too labyrinthine, or constructed on a foundation of behavior that has never once existed in real life. I have lived this, thought deeply about it, and landed on a system I genuinely stand behind. One that I use myself, that keeps me in control of my money, that eliminates financial stress almost entirely, and that lets me save and invest without fail every single month. If you feel like your money is just evaporating, too, if you know you should be further along financially, but cannot figure out where everything keeps going, I believe this approach is one of the most honest and workable fixes available. Before I get into it, though, do you currently track your budget? I am genuinely curious. My personal belief is that if you are not monitoring your money in some way, it becomes nearly impossible to know what you are consistently saving or investing each month. You don't need to track every last dollar, but tracking nothing at all, in my experience, is a slow financial leak you don't notice until it's serious. Let me tell you why I think most people's budgets collapse before they ever really get started, because understanding the failure is just as important as building the solution. In my view, there are exactly 3 culprits: excessive strictness, excessive complexity, and what I would call aspirational fiction. That third one is the sneaky one. It's the budget built around who you wish you were, rather than who you demonstrably are. People sit down with a fresh spreadsheet and declare they will never eat out, never make an impulse purchase, never deviate from the plan. And I understand the impulse. It feels virtuous in the moment. But the reality is that your coworker is going to invite you to lunch on a Tuesday, or you are going to have an absolutely brutal day, and the last thing you want to do is cook. These things happen. They happen to everyone. And when a budget has zero room for them, the inevitable minor deviation starts to feel like a moral failure. Suddenly, the budget doesn't feel like a tool. It feels like a punishment, like something designed to make your life smaller and more miserable. Nobody sustains that. People quit. And I think they are completely rational to quit too. Because a budget that strips all enjoyment out of your life was never going to survive contact with reality in the first place. The complexity trap is equally destructive, and I think it actually kills more budgets than strictness does. The math here is painfully simple. If maintaining your budget costs more mental energy than it saves you in financial clarity, you will abandon it. It might take a month. It might take 3. But eventually the 50-category spreadsheet, the daily logging, the constant app updates, all of it accumulates into a chore you dread rather than a tool you rely on. People fall behind by a week, feel overwhelmed catching up, and just stop entirely. And here is the part that frustrates me. Most of the time, they don't quit because they don't care about their money. They quit because the system was an unreasonable burden. That is a design flaw, not a character flaw. A budget that requires this much upkeep was always going to wear people down. What I firmly believe a good budget should feel like is a repeatable plan, not a restriction, and not a guessing game you have to resolve from scratch every pay period. It should feel like a track you are already on, one you just stay aligned with, rather than one you have to fight your way through. My conviction is that the right budgeting system gives you complete control over your money, still lets you enjoy your life, and does not require you to be someone you are not. You can have fun, you can spend on things you love, and simultaneously, because I believe this matters enormously, and I say constantly, you can be saving and investing on a dependable schedule. The earlier that investing starts, the more dramatically it compounds. That is not an opinion. That is arithmetic. But But none of it happens if the budget system breaks you first. So here is the actual template I use. Real structure, illustrative numbers. I want to be transparent that these are not my personal figures, but the architecture is exactly what I follow. I update it every 2 weeks without fail, and I build it around 2 paychecks per month. Whether you are paid semi-monthly, meaning the 1st and the 15th, or bi-weekly, meaning every other Friday regardless of the date, my recommendation is the same budget for 2 paychecks per month. If you're bi-weekly, you'll occasionally land a 3-paycheck month, but I think it's smarter and more stable to treat those as a windfall rather than a baseline. The core discipline here is that I do not do a monthly budget. I track expenses every time I get paid, which keeps me actively engaged with where my money is rather than checking in once at the end of the month and discovering it's already gone. Let's walk through the mid-month paycheck as a concrete example. Imagine you have $200 sitting in your checking account when your paycheck arrives, and that check is $2,000 after taxes. Your starting point, the total cash in play, is $2,200. That is your foundation for this 2-week window. From there, I break everything down into needs, wants, and whatever is left over, with a deliberate cushion built into that remainder for saving and investing. It is a 3-part system, and the simplicity of it is not a bug. It is the entire point. Needs are non-negotiable obligations, the things you genuinely cannot function without. Rent, electric bill, car payment, gas, groceries. And I place credit card payments in the needs column too, because I believe you should be zeroing your credit card balance every cycle without exception. I will come back to why that matters so much. Using the hypothetical numbers, the needs total for just this half of the month comes to $1,055. Here is something people often miss. The rent line in this mid-month paycheck is not the full rent. It is half. If your total monthly rent plus associated fees, trash pickup, internet, water, amenities, pest control, whatever your building charges, adds up to $1,370, then you are setting aside $685 from this paycheck and holding the other $685 for the next one. The same logic applies to the electric bill. Assuming $100 a month, you set aside $50 now. The car payment at $300 a month becomes $150 per paycheck. Gas, however, I do not split. $50 covers 2 weeks of driving for me, so that goes in at its full bi-weekly amount. Groceries at $120 for 2 weeks assumes $60 a week for a single person eating well, which I genuinely think is achievable if you're buying real food rather than convenience items. Credit cards start at 0, and the goal is to keep them there. Wants come next, and I consider this category essential rather than optional. Eliminating wants from a budget is one of the surest ways to guarantee you will quit the budget. Netflix at roughly $18 a month means $9 per paycheck. Spotify at $12 means $6. A gym membership at $50 means $25. These are small numbers that represent real quality of life. And I think respecting that in your budget is what separates a system you'll maintain from one you'll resent. Then comes the section I find most satisfying, the leftover. Take your $2,200, subtract the needs, subtract the wants, and what remains is yours to direct intentionally. Below that leftover line, I keep what I call a cushion. A buffer I set at $500, which is there specifically for life's small, unpredictable surprises, a minor car issue, a prescription you forgot to budget, anything that would otherwise send you reaching for the credit card in a panic. What I do mechanically when I receive this paycheck is transfer just the rent and fees portion. That's the $685 into a separate savings account. Not all the needs, just the rent. The remaining needs, electric, car payment, gas, groceries, stay in checking because their due dates are scattered through the month and I want them accessible. This means that even though the full $1,055 in needs is accounted for in my leftover calculation, a significant portion of it is still liquid in my checking account, which is exactly why the cushion is larger than it looks on paper. Between the $500 cushion and the $370 in remaining needs sitting in checking, there is actually $870 of real buffer in the account. After all of that, in this scenario, there is approximately $605 available to invest or save right from a single mid-month paycheck of $2,000. I also track any 401k contributions separately below that line, since technically you are investing even more than the $605 if your employer plan is active. Now let's talk about the end-of-month paycheck, because this is where the system's elegance becomes obvious. You receive another $2,000 before the rent is due, usually the first or second of the month. You move that saved $685 back from your savings account into checking. So your total available cash is now your new paycheck, plus what was already in checking, plus the returned $685, which lands at $2,885. The needs column now reflects the full month's costs rather than the half-month view. Rent plus fees at the full $1,370, electric at $100, car payment at $300. Gas and groceries stay at their bi-weekly amounts because you are just covering the next 2 weeks, not the full month. Credit cards go back to zero because you have zeroed them out. Then the wants column doubles. Full Netflix, full Spotify, full gym. After all of that, the leftover sits at $865. Keep the $500 cushion, and you still have over $300 available to invest or save right then. Some of the bills won't even be due yet. The car payment might hit on the 10th, the electric on the 17th, which is why those funds stay in checking rather than being shuffled around unnecessarily. The money is there when the bills arrive and you are never caught scrambling. I am a firm believer in budgeting per paycheck rather than per month. And the reason is behavioral as much as mathematical. When people budget for an entire month at once, there is a real and consistent tendency to overspend in the first 2 or 3 weeks. And then white knuckle through the back half with nothing left for enjoyment or flexibility. That pattern is exhausting, and I think it is one of the primary reasons people associate budgeting with misery. Splitting expenses across pay periods mirrors the actual rhythm of how money flows in and out of your life. It keeps you engaged in real time rather than doing damage control at month's end. Now, the credit card section deserves its own serious discussion because it is, without question, the most dangerous variable in this entire system. Here is the trap. When you have $600 in your leftover category after mid-month needs and wants are accounted for, that $600 feels real and spendable. But if you have been charging things to your credit card throughout the 2 weeks and the balance has crept up to $500, your actual financial position is not $600 of freedom. It is $100. The credit card debt is real money owed, even if it is not sitting in your face every time you check your balance. This is why I believe in zeroing out the credit card every few days, not just at the billing cycle. When you do that, your checking account balance genuinely reflects your financial position rather than giving you a falsely optimistic picture. I know it can feel tedious. I have occasionally let it slip myself. But the discipline of frequent credit card payoffs is, in my view, one of the highest leverage habits in personal finance. And if you know yourself well enough to recognize that credit cards are a temptation you are not ready to manage, use your debit card. You will miss out on rewards points, but you will not accidentally spend money you do not have, and I think that trade-off is completely worth it for a lot of people. What I have come to love most about this structure, the needs bucket, the wants bucket, the leftover with a built-in cushion, and the saving and investing flow, is how clearly it tells the story of my money. The leftover section shows me exactly what remains after my obligations and my enjoyment are both honored. The cushion absorbs the small chaos that life reliably generates, and whatever clears those two filters goes toward building actual long-term wealth. Once that buffer exists and compounds, it creates something I think is underrated in conversations about personal finance. Stability-driven confidence. Not the fake confidence of pretending things are fine, but the real confidence that comes from knowing you have a system and that it is working. I have run this budget through income levels ranging from $55,000 a year all the way into six figures, and the framework scales cleanly every time. The only number I am genuinely updating every 2 weeks is the credit card balance. Everything else is largely fixed, which means the maintenance cost of this system is extremely low, exactly as it should be. If there is one conviction I want to leave you with, it is this: the best budget is not the most restrictive one. It is not the one that makes you feel most virtuous by eliminating every pleasure. The best budget is the one you will actually follow consistently over years and income levels and life changes. Not for a month, not until the novelty wears off, but one that lasts long term. This system, paycheck-based, simple in structure, honest about wants, protective of a cushion, is the one that has worked for me through all of it. I genuinely think it can work for you too. And that is how I believe you should budget in 2026. And with that, I hope you all the best, and I'll see you on the next one. Peace.